Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Work Punks. In today's Agony Uncles questions, we have another one lined up for you. And your uncles will be Ben Simpson of VitalOrg, Colin Newlyn of Decrapify Work, and myself, Paul Jansen of Trustworks. I think we have a question, Colin, for you, don't we? Do you want to read it
Yeah,
out?
yeah, I've got one here. I think it was delivered on, by a hawk on vellum scroll at some point. But it's a question which is, how can I be happy at work when people are promoted not based on merit or competence, but rather because of connections and politicking? So I think we can all associate with this. We've all
Mm.
seen this sort of stuff going on. And I mean, it's just a fact of life, isn't it? That although we are told that it's a meritocracy and if we work hard, we'll get on, that's not actually quite how the world works. And people do get promoted because they know people. My dad always used to say, "It's not what you know, it's who you know." I'm afraid that's still true. And yeah, there's a lot of politicking goes on. Something that I never really wanted to participate in, which is probably why I didn't get to any great stellar heights in my career. And I think mean, I did a newsletter just recently on a piece of research I read that was there's a certain point at which competence still matters. So you progress so far through the organization, and it is partly based on whether you can do the job. And then you get to a point where, as you get up to seniority, everybody's proven they're competent. And then it becomes mostly about the politicking and positioning and, game playing and stuff.
Mm.
Um, so how do you deal with I suppose, the inherent unfairness of that and reconcile yourself to it and still get something out of your job? Um, and I think this is really about finding your own motivations and your own reasons for doing the work, um, and not tying your happiness and um, satisfaction to the way the organization works. Uh, so you have to decide what it is that you want to achieve out of the job. How is it helping you with your career? What are you learning? Um, and be much more focused on what you're getting out of the role. Uh, because then you're almost building a detachment and independence from the organization, which will prove useful later on should the organization decide that they don't need you. Um, and it's a sort of insurance for the future as well. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's wonderful if you can do it, but I think it's quite hard to do. Um, I mean, I'm not sure I've got any great silver bullets or fixes. What I would say is, as Colin has said, this goes on way, way, way too much, and the unintended consequences of it are absolutely huge. You know, quite senior people who are who are very often absolutely brilliant at what they do. These are proper grown-ups where they see other people who are perhaps better at the peacocking and politicking, getting promoted, getting opportunities, having more of a voice. Very often those people will kind of quietly leave. So it is very, 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 very difficult for us to be able to move beyond it sometimes, especially if those people are, absolutely out for themselves to the detriment of the team and the wider organization. That can really, really hurt, especially, if you're doing what I think part of Colin is advocating is, be invested in the purpose and the difference that you're making, and the rest is noise. But if people are happy to sabotage that for an opportunity to look good under the spotlight, then
Yeah,
that's more tricky. The bottom line is, if you will have opportunities without making it personal to demonstrate quite clearly and role model what you're doing is for the higher purpose, the greater good, and be really, really clear and strong around that. and that role modeling might change behaviors, but especially as people get more senior, kind of the die is cast, isn't it? So I don't know, Paul, what are your thoughts? What's the Dutch wisdom on this?
My first response to the question was similar to Colin's, actually. That I was intrigued by the fact that in the question the happiness is attached to whether you're being promoted or not, and I would, as Colin already did, I was also on that wavelength that I think it's good to be not so focused on that particular link, and try and see the bigger picture about what really makes you motivated and happy, both in work and outside of work, rather than whether you get promoted or not. Even though, of course, I do know that we spend an awful lot of time at our workplace, and if we see people passing us by promotion-wise or career-wise, of whom we think that they're not more worthy than us, then it's sometimes demotivating. That's for sure. I like your observation, Colin, that some of in the early stages of your career it's more competence based whether you get promoted or not, and as you go it's perhaps less so. I certainly feel that, well, I was quite naive, I think, early in my career. I thought that if I did my job really well, I would get rewarded by being promoted. And actually, of course, it isn't really like that. And that isn't, well, it isn't like that probably 9 times out of 10. And that's not purely because all the evil other ones are constantly scheming and politicking and all the rest of it. I think it's there may be an aspect of that. But at the same time, for a promotion, I think the rest of the organization will want to understand who you are and what value you bring to perhaps this new role or this other part of the organization. And the only way they can make an assessment of that is by seeing you and seeing you take initiative and sticking your neck out a bit and doing a bit of networking or doing things extracurricular activities, for want of a better word, outside of your regular job description. So yes, seeing that through a dark lens might be seen as politicking, scheming and chatting up with the boss's boss and all the rest of it. But actually, in practice, it's about making yourself visible and also exposing yourself to parts of the organization that you might learn from, but you could also add value to, and then you become a logical candidate for the next step in your career. So I think you got to be careful and perhaps also reflect on through what lens you look at those colleagues who have been passing you by career-wise.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned naivety there, because I was about to say that I think I was somewhat naive, and that there's all this is the game, and perhaps you have to be. If you're not going to play the game, then you can't expect to win. You have to find a way of engaging with it. And I think is it Professor Jeffrey Pfeffer at Harvard, I think he's at. He teaches a course on power. He's written a book on it as well, and it's the most popular course for grads there. And he has a theory that this exists, and you need to learn how to obtain power. And there are certain things that you have to do to do that. And you can obtain power for yourself, but you can also obtain power in order to yield it to achieve the objectives that you want to achieve. And his whole sort of the rationale for teaching this is, we're training the people that are going to go on and run, industry in the US or whatever. And this is the game, and you need to know how to play the game so you get to the top, rather than some self-serving, greedy bastard. So you get the power to do what you think is right for society. Yeah, I suppose there is a little bit of well, perhaps we just need to grow up a bit as well and find a way of engaging with this. And as you say, look at it positively. So why are you going to get promoted if the people who are sitting around the table saying who we're going to promote don't even know who you are? Yes, it's a basic sort of hygiene test. Have we met this person? Do we know anything about them?
I think ultimately, and that's perhaps another aspect that we haven't quite touched upon yet, is that is this ultimately you probably made bigger steps career-wise by actually hopping over to another organization, right? Rather than following the career path in your own organization. That's the case with 99%, I think, of organizations that ultimately it's crowded on that career path within your organization, and therefore you can perhaps make bigger steps by taking the plunge and applying for jobs at other companies. And that, of course, is another thing that you may want to consider, and also how you can best prepare for that in your current job already. So how do you not just network and get to know people in your own organization, but actually explore what else is happening in your sector, in your line of work, that you might learn from, that you get context from, that expose you to new influences and ideas that make the work and your life more interesting and fun. And who knows, gives you a better opportunity to make the next big step.
Yeah, there's also a thing about finding, it's a bit like leadership, isn't it? That I think sometimes we look at the way other people do this stuff and think, oh, that's a bit yucky. But actually, if you can find a way to do it on your own terms, find your own style in how to do it, So we've all seen people who network and sidle up to the boss at, whenever they get a chance and ask, obsequious questions or whatever, and make out skin crawl. But you don't have to do it like that. There's other ways of making connections with people and building relationships that are more naturally us. So yeah, so it's and that once you've discovered that will benefit you going forward as well.
Well, it made me think. I did 11 years for my corporate employer, and I probably had 5 or 6 jobs, and I never got an interview for any of them. I was just asked to do them. So maybe I was an unintentional politica, whatever the word is. Each one of those, I always felt that I was, why me? I can't, now they're expecting me to do this. And I guess actually the reflection on that is, if you put yourself in the position of the people at the top, they've got fires that they need to put out or opportunities that need to be grabbed quickly, and they need to find people to be able to do those gigs, right? So it's hard for them. So if they don't know people well, then they probably are likely, doesn't make them bad. They are likely to pick from the people that are better at promoting themselves, but simply because of that. Or you just get a bit of a reputation of being the sort of person who you can parachute into somewhere for 18 months and will get the head round it and will, have a positive impact. And those people probably in organizations get a bit overused. So yeah, there's a lot to this, but it's quite interesting. What's been helpful to me is look at it through the lens of the people at the top who've got these challenges that they need to find a safe pair of hands to deliver on. Who are they going to choose? They may well spot the peacocks as well as the peers spot the peacocks and avoid those people, or they may not. Yeah, interesting. Thank you, Colin. You've made me think.
Yeah,
Reminds me a bit of that basketball coach that I played for once. Then, if you wanted to get on as quickly as possible from the bench, then you made sure that you sat next to him on the bench, because he would always go to that person. Right, you on? I'm messing it up. You on? Anyway, we hope that this helps you a little bit with your conundrum. Thanks for sending in your question, and thanks for listening and watching our episode of Work Punks, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.
See you next time. Bye.